Yeah, so this is a little more about working in the arts. We're trying really hard to gather resources and pathways and do programming of this sort to help you fit in and feel a little more comfortable with starting your careers in um, the arts and culture sector in Canada. Okay, so just a little bit about today, just a little housekeeping. We're going to be talking to 4 wonderful artists who have joined us today and taking the time to be here. I am so pleased to be a part of this and see where this can take us forward. So I'm going to pass it on to our moderator, Stephan Dyer. Thank you so much for being here, for being a part of this conversation. And yeah, over to you, Stephan.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Round of applause for Naomi for setting this up, for organizing this. Thank you very much for being here. Welcome to a panel discussion with Newcomer and Immigrant artists. Thank you again for Working Culture, for organizing and having us. Our objective today is to speak about our experience pursuing a career and supporting our artistic practice in Toronto and the GTA. We're going to discuss artistic communities and networks, types of training and education available, resources for those building or supporting an artistic practice, and more. But at the same time, we want to get to know you a little bit. I want to see in the chat, where are people connecting from? So everybody in the chat, let us know, where are you? Are you in Toronto? Are you in Vancouver? Are you in Costa Rica, where I'm from? Are you in Chile, where Sebastián is from? Where is it? Okay, Jerry, Etobicoke, Toronto. Hi from the GTA, Toronto. Oh, a lot of Torontos. Toronto, Philippines. I love it. Jamaica, Crystal, I love it. Edmonton, Jamaica, Brampton, Jamaica, Hamilton, Manila. Oh my God, a lot of the Jamaica fans for Kareen here. Very nice. Hamilton, Vancouver, Manila, Philippines, New York, from the moon, says Nelson Orjuela. My Latino jokers. Okay, I love it. Toronto, I came from Ukraine. Jamaica, Burlington. Toronto, Colombia, says Laura Salamanca. Halifax, Paulina Osorio, says Mexico. Okay, very cool. We have a very diverse audience, and we're super happy to be here. Naomi, can you stop sharing, if you can, our beautiful faces, or is it just, okay, there we go. Very, very cool. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen today. I'm going to be your moderator that I'm very excited for. And then I'm going to just do a little bit of a presentation about my career and how I became a banker turned comedian. Then I'm going to introduce the panelists who are here. Sebastián, say hi. Betty, say hi. Kareen, say hi. For all of the Jamaican fans, thousands of Jamaican fans here in the audience here. And then each of the panelists, as I'm introducing them, they're also going to give a 5-minute presentation about their careers and what they do, what they represent, what they're passionate about. And then we're going to start a little bit of a panel discussion, which we really want to see you in the chat throughout. We want to hear you and we want to see you in the chat. And at the time, after the panel discussion, we're going to stop the recording and we're going to start the Q&A. In case there are some things that there's some vulnerable sharing or anything, the Q&A will not be filmed so that we can actually have an even more meaningful discussion. All right, my friends, thank you for being here. My name is Stephan Dyer, and I'm going to start with my little 5-minute presentation. And I'm very excited. If you have any comments, emojis, put them in the chat as we're going. So this is not to be meant to be a monologue. This is meant to be a conversation, an experience. I know all of you don't have your mics on, just so that the sound quality is great, but we love to see you in the chat through comments and emojis, obviously our favorites. Okay, so who am I? Why are we here? So my name is Stephan Dyer, and I am a banker turned comedian, keynote speaker, and corporate communication trainer. How did that happen? Well, in 2003, look at me on the left-hand side, 2003, me coming to Canada. That is me going to a high school in Quebec. That is me on the left-hand side, consuming half of the world's hair gel. One picture. And I was talking with Betty and the panelists before, and Toronto feels like home because it's almost like nobody feels like home. And because everybody's from different places, I've been able to really feel like this is my second home. I'm a bit of a nomad myself. I was born in Costa Rica, but I also lived in Peru, where my parents are from. At age 10, I moved to El Salvador. At age 14, I moved to Mexico. At age 15 to Montreal, and age 18 to Toronto. All this moving because of my dad's job. My dad is a drug lord. No, I'm kidding. No, my dad moved around because of business, and that's why I got to experience a lot of these cultures. So I got to do high school at this boarding school in across the river from Bishop's University. In 2003, in 2006, I got the opportunity to go to the University of Toronto to study finance, where I graduated after 4 years. And because of my Spanish and my finance, I was able to get a job at Scotiabank, where it seems like half of the Latinos in Toronto work in. And that is me on the right-hand side working at Scotiabank Toronto. That is when I was an intern. My mom took that picture. She asked me to model for that picture. And I ended up working there for 7 years until after 2-3 years doing stand-up comedy on the side, I quit my full-time juicy paycheck paying job to pursue my professional career in stand-up comedy. So this is where I used to work. This is where I work now. But the real question is, how did we get here? How did I get here? It doesn't just happen by coincidence. How did I get here? This is me and my business partner. We both quit at the same time. We were both senior managers at Scotiabank, and we both quit at the same time in 2017. Actually, 6 years ago today, we quit our jobs. He was a senior manager in brand and marketing, and I was a senior manager in wealth management. And this is us telling our story in Malaysia. But the real question is, how did I get here? Now I'm a dad. This is Liam and my wife, Narzali. She's from Venezuela, and Liam is proudly Canadian, Venezuelan, Costa Rican, Salvadorian, Mexican, Torontonian, Montrealonian. Well, it's a mix of volunteering. It's a mix of networking. It's a mix of being 100% you. And it's mainly, as I like to say, escaping competition through authenticity. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for this last minute. And I just briefly want to discuss this last part. And a lot of us, when we come to Canada, we have to stop doing what we love back home because we're in survival mode. We got to get that first job. We got to survive high school or university. Especially if you're an international student, you got to find a way to get a job so that you can get your work permit and then your permanent residence, and otherwise you can't stay. So it's very stressful. And sometimes you forget what the things that make you who you are, you stop doing them, but that's your essence, whether that be doing stand-up comedy, or maybe painting, or maybe sculpture, or maybe poetry, or maybe playing soccer, maybe playing rugby. And I feel that in the surviving Canada, you sometimes forget. But as you start to meet new people, you got to tell people what you want to do, where you want to work, what you love to do, and people will help you. And then you got to have a lot of courage to get that self-awareness as to what already makes you great, to what you love doing, and then you combine them so that you can hopefully, like in my case, after working for 7 years a corporate job, you can save a little bit enough money to buy yourself a year of testing this little thing called comedy. And in my case, having a solid plan B that if it didn't work out, I could go back to the bank. It's not about quitting today. It's about planning ahead. You can do it as a hobby for many years, but it is possible in Canada. That is a little bit about me. And now we're going to say hi to our amazing panelists, and they're going to give you a very similar, in their own style, in their own words, about who they are, why we love them, why they're here. And our first panelist is my Latino brother, Sebastián Oreamuno, born in Santiago, Chile. Sebastián Oreamuno is a queer Toronto-based artist and academic, currently pursuing his PhD in dance studies at York University. His doctoral research explores the relationship between diasporic embodied memory and cueca, the Chilean national dance. I'm going to let Sebastián tell you a little bit more. Please help me welcome Sebastián Oreamuno. Bravo!
Thank you, Stephan. Gracias, Stephan. I think what you said at the end, like being your authentic self and escaping competition through authenticity really resonated with me. And what I want to say in this moment, and I'm going to speak from memory, is that I came into the dance sector, into professional dance, in a very roundabout way, because I was in survival mode, because I had an interest in dance. I loved dance. I danced with my family back home in Chile when I was young. And when I moved to Canada, it became less accessible because only my immediate family immigrated, and my whole extended family, stayed back in Santiago. And so I lost dance for a little bit of time. I wasn't able to dance with my family, and so I gravitated to other forms of dance expression, such as music videos. So I really loved watching music videos and learning the choreography. And I was a very shy, I'm still an introverted person. I was a perfectionist, and I'm working on that. I haven't released it all because sometimes perfectionism can be valuable and important. So I actually didn't start training in dance until I was 17 and out of high school, because I was scared of being bullied, and that was my reality. And that was okay, because I think it taught me a lot about patience, a lot about waiting and finding the right moment to be courageous. It taught me to follow my intuition and to really understand, the path that I wanted to follow. And so I ended up in the academy, and I've really have a very complicated relationship with the university. It has taught me a lot of valuable things, and it has been restrictive in other ways. But one of the most important things that I have received from the university has been the possibility to work with people from different disciplines and different artistic practices. And this is how I entered into the PhD, is with this perspective of networking, or at least, finding collaborators and finding people to make art with that weren't necessarily in dance. And I have actually found much more generosity and openness outside of, dance. And I think that it's partly because when you're in a dance sector, or when you're part of a dance community, there's so many people that have come before you. But people who are in the visual arts or in sculpture or, installation, they're not necessarily involved in dance in the same way. So the possibility to collaborate is actually quite higher, and you're able to experiment which is also has been really, really interesting for me. So as I started my PhD, I started multimedia artistic practice where I would dance, draw, and then write these short, like poetry, so I was getting different types of artistic forms. And it really reinvigorated my passion for dance, particularly because as I was, when I left high school and I started doing dance training, I started with ballet. And my perfectionism got the better of me. And because I couldn't really attain that professional level in my ballet training, I kind of started to feel down about myself. So when I started the PhD, I kind of left that behind and I started moving intuitively and moving to my own rhythms, really connecting to my Chilean background, as well as creating visual art and poetry. And that allowed me to gain some sort of confidence in myself that actually helped me to audition to some dance companies, which resulted in me entering the professional dance sector by working with Sashar Zarif and Aria Evans and Noemi LaFrance, with whom, with Sashar specifically and Aria, I have such great connections still because I was able to be my authentic self. They allowed that for me, and I was able to move in the ways that felt good in my body. And that wouldn't have been possible, again, if I hadn't met people in the university that actually directed me to work with them. So Michaela Demers, I had a choreography class with her when I did my master's, and she's the one that, directed me to audition for Aria's company, Political Movement. And Tamika was a person I met also in my master's, and she directed me to Sashar. So the way that I have entered into the dance sector has been very peripheral. I've kind of gone, like the long way around and spiraled inwards, but I have met so many important people and significant people along the way with whom I've created great relationships and who have helped me to succeed in what I wanted to do, as Stephan mentioned before. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Round of applause for Sebastián. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I really loved what you said about patience, because I think as immigrants / newcomers, when we come here, it's very difficult. And not only do you want everything immediately, but at times you feel that everybody else is succeeding except you, So I think you saying that only after high school did you start to pursue this is very important. In my case, to echo your words, I quit my bank job when I was 29, but I was doing stand-up and other forms of public speaking for 5 years, and I would see others doing it full time. And it was only until when I was 29, 6 years ago, that I decided, I was like, well, I'm not married, I have no mortgage, I have no kids. This is the time to take risks. But you can't compare your chapter 3 to somebody else's chapter 64, because that can be very discouraging. So thank you so much for sharing, Sebastián. Our next panelist is our beloved Kareen Weir. And the fans are ready. The fans are hyped in the chat. Kareen Weir is an award-winning contemporary artist and writer who endeavors to be a teaching and living example of the positive products that come out of the Jamaican society. She's a graduate of the Edna Manley College with a major in sculpture, but has been exploring the world of mural painting since immigrating to Canada in 2014. Please help me welcome Kareen Weir.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kareen Weir, as Stephan said. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Anna. Hi, my Jamaica Massive. I'm a visual learner, so I wanted to put together some visuals to help guide you through some of my journey, as it, just relates to me being not only a newcomer, but an immigrant, as well as, Black artist. Next slide, please. So about a little bit about me, I'm an immigrant from Spanish Town, Jamaica. As Stephan said earlier, I graduated from the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts. It's the only English-speaking arts college in the Caribbean. I am a proud Women's Girl alumni. I have had 9 years navigating my journey as a multidisciplinary artist here in Canada. I'm a sculptress, a muralist, a writer, a patois enthusiast for sure. I was the RBC Newcomer Artist Awardee for 2021, the 2022 Al Green Sculpture Scholarship Awardee. So I've spent the last 8 months so far rediscovering and reacquainting myself with my sculpture practice. I am a scenic permit for the IATSE Film Union here in Toronto, a member of the Astro Sankofa Collective, and a former Youth Council volunteer with the AGO, which is the Art Gallery of Ontario, for those who don't know. Next slide, please. As it says, my work looks at themes of memory, retention, representation, and identity through the Black experience and deliberate use of patois language as the primary means of expression. I exercise the might of my pen to advocate for the preservation of Jamaican Creole and pay homage to the oral legacy, and history of my ancestors once removed. The text-based works seek to make visual impact and combat the feelings of invisibility by using bold print and color in ways that are inspired by and reflect the bright and vivid culture of Jamaica and her countrymen. Next slide, please. There is memory, legacy, and heritage in the tongue, and my personal mission, my art mission, is to stamp patois across the world to build, beautify, and brighten our global community. When I got to Canada, it was very lonely. I felt very isolated, and within the isolation and the need to connect with self and the need to connect, just with community, I found that language had a big part to play in my life, and so it became just a big part of my practice. And when I think about just the history of what patois is and where it's coming from and how it had to trickle down for it to be what it is today, for the struggle that it had to go through for it to be even just, built as a language, I thought that it was only right to, for it to be a tool in my work, for me to advocate for it, as I've said before, and to carry it as far as I can take it to, add to the culture in my own way, and to give it my personal stamp, so that when we move forward in the future, there can be other young Jamaican artists, visual artists, whatever it is, who will also take up the mantle and see the value in patois, see the value in what is in the memory in our tongue, and to put it forward in a creative way to help design the culture of Jamaica more positively. Next slide, please. And just to give you just a bit of visuals about my work, here is some of the sculpture work that I've done. This was my final year in college, just around the cusp of 2014, a little before I moved to Canada. Next. I've worked with, I've done welding, I've done woodwork. I didn't like how the metal cut up my hands, so I opted for, I guess, a softer medium. This is cardboard or paper, so paper mache sculptures that stand about 5-6 feet tall by 3 feet across. This was for my final year presentation. Next, please. At the Al Green Sculpture Studio and School, where I'm currently doing my scholarship, I'm just, as I said, rediscovering the passion, learning to, work with new mediums. So clay, oil-based clay is, one of those things that I've never really fiddled with. And I decided to take up the challenge to use it to help me to create these sculpture markers. This is my first sculpture commission in Canada, where I was commissioned to do these markers for the Little Jamaica community in Toronto, to help to, add interest to the space that is undergoing heavy construction, which it has been for the last decade, or since I've been here, it's been under construction. And I wanted to add a bit of my touch, my charm, and a bit of patois, and a unifying statement. This is our national motto out of many, one. And I thought it would, rally together the community and to get people interested to know what's going around, and to highlight some of the Black businesses that are in the area to help bring more foot traffic and more business to build the local economy. Next. And just some life modeling work, just to show a bit more of just some of the process of what's been happening within the sculpture scholarship. Next, please. Definitely one of my favorite pieces. This was also just a really big mural piece of me in Canada first, at the NIA Center for the Arts. They've been pivotal in my arts career from the very beginning. They gave me space, resources. I've acquired mentorship through the NIA Center for the Arts. And they gave me the freedom to explore, at the beginning, just how I would be able to use patois, how I'd begin to make that mark making, how I'd begin to stamp. And from there, it's just, catalyzed me into other projects. I've met, just influential people. I've, met, art colleagues, just definitely important people in the Black arts community as well. And I'm doing my part and doing my best to to continue to push myself, to continue to be creative, and to put out these works that I'm hoping will positively impact community. Next. This is how it started in Jamaica, 2014, the summer before moving up. This is the Paint Jamaica group in Kingston, Jamaica. This was my first mural. And it was from here that, it kind of launched me into being able to becoming a permit worker at IATSE, and for me to be able to even, get access to the Mural Roots art, the Mural Roots Mural Art Development Program, and other things such like. Next. This is Women Paint 2019. Next. Legacy in Motion at the Chinese Cultural Center in Greater Toronto and Scarborough, done with mural roots. Next. And the Baldwin Street mural, where we shut down the whole street for the entire day, and just more patchwork, more muraling. Next. Kiba is a t-shirt line that came out of my own personal summoning of courage to break Black silencing through the flamboyant use of Jamaican oration. It says, "Don't make me root you," which is to ask people to come with caution, or to know how to approach you before they converse or pass on energy. And so it became a kind of armor for me at the time, and there were other folks in community who resonated with the message. And so I began printing t-shirts for those who were of the patois speaking variety, who wanted to be covered and protected while going out on the road, while also asking people to to make sure that they don't take step. Next. As a newcomer, it definitely does take a village. I found like-minded colleagues, companions, mentorship, and job opportunities and I put Black in brackets because it wasn't just the Black arts community, the arts community in general, but the Black arts community definitely had a heavy hand to play in how far I've been able to come. Next. This is some of the writing work. This was a residency done with the Water Theatre, where I was mentored by DB Anita Africa. I wrote the beginnings of my personal patois novel during this stage. It's still to be published. It will be. I haven't given up on it. But this was the beginning of that, where I began to meet more, just community members, and to have that sense of community for myself, to be able to have the creative outpouring. Next. Just more community, holding space at the NIA Center. Next. And again, this is the Black Women Artists Collective, where 100 Black women artists sat and ate in the halls of the AGU, just as an act of taking up space. And it was, extremely powerful, extremely moving. I was very proud to be a part of it, very happy to be a part of just the collective, to be in this moment in time. Just to to showcase that we are here, that we are moving, and that we are doing the necessary work. Next. These are just some of the other art communities that I've been a part of that didn't get mentioned before. that have held space, that have given, just mentorship or guidance through, the different leaders in the spaces, that have given, shown me, what I need to learn, how, I need to maintain my curiosity about the space in order to learn the landscape creatively, how to set myself up as an artist, just plugs for different workshops, to continue my learning so that I'm able to keep moving forward. Next. If you would like to know how to contact me, you can email me at weirthings@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram at odd1, which is ODD0NE, or at weirthings. And the website is coming soon where you'll be able to shop, you'll be able to learn more about me, you'll be able to see more projects, probably sign up to the newsletter that is gonna be happening, and just to, I'll be your art service provider, and you will be able to find everything there. Next. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kareen. Amazing. I love the patois, because there's you probably know this, I don't know, but there's a big Jamaican community in Costa Rica. There's 7 provinces in Costa Rica, and there's one called Limon, and they're a big part of our of the community. They speak patois, Spanish, English, and it's really cool. It's on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica. So I love that you're being a voice to those people, because imagine how transformational it is for somebody to come into Canada, feel lost, and then connect with somebody who's as passionate about patois as you, and that could open the floodgates to lots of things. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. I'm hoping that it will definitely feel more like home. Canada is home to a lot, and I'm hoping that by encountering these different works and spaces, that it will feel more like home the more they travel through the city.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Our next panelist is Betty Xie. Betty is a Chinese Canadian filmmaker, fundraising consultant, and coach for creatives. In the past decade, she's worked in the arts, cultural, and nonprofit sector as a fund development professional. Alongside her arts management career, she is an award-winning filmmaker. Please help me welcome Betty.
Thank you, Stephan. Naomi, are you able to share your screen for me for my slides?
Yes, Betty, give me 1 second.
No problem, take your time. Well, you're doing that. I just want to be thankful that like Stephan, Sebastián, and Kareen set the stage for storytelling that is really truly like how we have come to embrace our authentic self in our career. And I feel like well, we got gathered together and prepared with this panel before, but we didn't know what each other was going to say, but it really kind of become like a common theme in our storytelling. And I look forward to the panel discussion later. As for me, I'm Betty. I'm a filmmaker, fundraising consultant, and career coach. Whenever I introduce myself as such at a networking event to a new contact, the response I usually get is a, what? Come again? What do you do again? And that's very validated because I do multiple different things. And as you see in my story, like it took me a journey to come to embrace my multifaceted self in my creative practice and my creative business nowadays. And when working culture, I invited us for this panel and asked each of us to share our story. I thought actually there's like 2 ways to tell one's career story. So I'm going to give you the 2 versions. Version 1, now we can go to the next slide. Version 1 is usually the ones that you basically the expanded version of our bio or something that you see in someone's LinkedIn. It tells a very linear story. And as for me, those linear milestones include my immigration experience when I came to Canada in my teenage years and didn't speak the language and went through ESL. Then fell in love with film in university when I came to Toronto and did my BA in cinema studies and Asia Pacific studies. I really wanted to become a filmmaker as well as a film curator. And that's why after college, I looked for opportunities, and particularly through the support of Toronto Real Asian Film Festival, I started working there and also participating in their first time filmmaking program and become a filmmaker. And through that early stage of my career, I worked as a film festival organizer. And alongside with it, I make independent films. And through those years of working in arts nonprofit, I fell into fundraising accidentally, because as most of you probably know, small nonprofits need support in fund development. And I thought that would be like a good skill for me to build both for my filmmaking career as well as my nonprofit career. After a couple of years of working, I went back to school at OCAD University and did my master's degree in strategic foresight innovation. And they gave me the foundation in business design, design thinking, as well as consulting business. So after I graduated during the pandemic, I founded my consulting and coaching business, and actually also fell in love with coaching. And now I do those three things that you saw at the beginning slide, coaching creative one-on-one to navigate their career. I consult arts nonprofits on their fund development, as well. I still make films and videos. So this is like kind of the linear version of telling my story and telling one story from this perspective. But as all of you know, and we've heard that from the stories that Stephan, Sebastián, and Kareen share, none of our story is linear, especially when you are coming to a new country and migrating and finding your identity along the way. So I thought today's panel is really about talking and discussing those non-linear points. Hence, I'm going to give you the version 2 of my story. Naomi, can you go to the next slide? Which is this, and I would say the more authentic version of anyone's career journey. When I graduated from my BA, and as a 1.5 generation immigrant in this country, I was shocked how hard it was to make a living as an arts professional and artist in this country, especially compared to my business friends, and as well as friends in other industry or legal industry. And for me, it became more like a necessity that I had to practice my independent filmmaking practice and work in a job. And I really wanted to build my connection. That's why I went into the nonprofit arts sector. And after a few years of working more than full-time job and having a side art making practice, as you can imagine, and I know a lot of artists and artist professionals experiences, I had serious burnout. And more than that, I think I didn't find myself belong one way or the other. And the lack of belonging that I always felt was that among a room of business-minded people, I was always the artist and the filmmaker. And then among a room of artists, I will always be the more business-minded person. And that's why even in filmmaking, my specialty has become film producing. And for me, early on in my career, and I'm sure a lot of you got this advice that there is this advice that you got to specialize or focus, especially when you're an artist, on one thing so that you can really deepen that craft and hone in that. And that created a lot of confusion. It didn't compute in my brain. And I thought I was the problem, that I had this multi-interest. I really like the stuff that I do in a nonprofit sector, and I really like filmmaking, but none of that is really super focused or just defined by one thing. So with that sense of feeling lost and the sense of burnout that I felt, I went back to school, really to rediscover myself. And to be honest, at the time, I really thought I'm going to quit the arts if I were to go to kind of business program and reinvent myself. Long story short, what I discovered in grad school is that my passion for filmmaking and for the arts doesn't change just because I started taking some design thinking or business design course. I'm still the person that I have always been, and I come to embrace the different passions that I have and my multifaceted self. And I also come to realize something that I think everyone before me has shared, is that the importance of seeking support, mentorship, coaching, finding a community of people to support and embrace my authentic self. And through that, I build a confidence, or rather rebuild the confidence that I can design the pathway or the shape of my career in the ways that serve my needs and my wants. So when I encounter leadership coaching at first, initially as a professional development opportunity for my job, I thought this is like really amazing that like I'm able to not just help myself, support myself to overcome some mindset shifts or some beliefs or assumptions I used to have that are not supportive of me, but I can also go out and help other artists and creatives because I can see that that's being the supportive mechanism that was needed. And that's how I then again added another lane to my practice, which is coaching. So I hope that as we unfold and we hear more of each other's stories and hopefully from the audience to what your stories and what your journeys are, that we all create this culture or this space that uphold each other multifaceted, or if you're a specialist, your choice of like what your definition of a creative career is. And before I go off, now we can go to the next slide. For my own practice of like coaching and talking to creators for hours and hours, I've come up with this free resource for all of you, and we'll leave the link in the chat as well, which is free quiz to discover your own archetypal creative careers. And I've designed this so that it specifically doesn't prescribe personality, but rather the shape of career that you are leading in your creative path. And the purpose or the ethos behind this is that I find that if we are just able to name the different kinds of creative archetypes or the shapes of a career, and being able to accept the diverse, like the whole spectrum of creative types, then we are able to understand and identify the specific pain points, our own strengths, and our unique challenges, and our unique kind of mindset as we lead our own unique path. So I hope this has gotten great feedback from my audience, and I've used it myself. I hope that to share it with all of you here. And I look forward to our discussions.
Thank you so much, Betty. You are like my long lost sister, I find. Because I do feel, I went on your website, like I told you, and a part of your website says, having grown up navigating 2 cultures and 3 languages, English, Mandarin, and Cantonese, I find and celebrate my identity in in-betweenness. In between Asia and Canada, I have directed and produced films that look into how Asian diaspora come to embrace their cultural roots in the process of migration and immigration. And I find like I always felt like the fish out of water, like the outsider. And it's a very cool way to feel that we've created a community, at least in Toronto, or finally we found something where we're all outsiders, and that kind of makes you an insider, you know? So thank you so much for sharing. We got super excited with our presentations, and to the point that now we only have like 30 seconds for the panel. No, I'm joking. We still got like just over 10 minutes. So let's jump right into it. Welcome back to Sebastián and Kareen. The 4 of us are being spotlighted here. And let's just transition right away. I like what Betty was saying about everybody in Canada tells you like, oh, you have to specialize. But sometimes that comes at the expense of you. And I used to feel horrible one time at the bank. It wasn't ill-intentioned or anything, but somebody was like, hey, are you a banker or are you a comedian? And I was like, why can't I be a banker and a comedian, you know? So, but it did get me thinking, like, maybe it's time for me to double down on these things. But as I've progressed in my career, I've realized that the same things I used to hide or sometimes be ashamed of are the same things that make me unique and special as an artist. For example, if there's like 30,000 bankers in Canada, how many of them are comedians? That would make me special in many ways. So I think to get that first job, maybe you need to specialize. But if you want to grow and make it far, you do need to triple down on your strengths and what makes you you. I want to get your take on how you've explored authenticity and double down on who you are. First, Sebastián, then Kareen, and then back to Betty.
I think what you said makes sense, Stephan, that I think for me, I had to figure out how to continue in some, like down some path. So for me, my specialization would be to continue with studying, right? And then find ways to move into dance. So that's why I went from psychology and I applied to a master's of dance here at York, but then a master in Roehampton in the UK for movement therapy. York gave me the funding, which was great. And then I could also just concentrate on thinking about dance. But even going into the dance sector, you have to demonstrate, like, how do you get hired if nobody knows who you are? You know, so you have to demonstrate that you can do the thing so that you can then be like, okay, I can do the thing, but I can also do other things. And this is what the other things that I can bring. So for me, it's been like, one, continuing down the academy because it's been a kind of certainty and a place where I can ground myself or at least root myself, but also pushing myself to go out there and demonstrate that I can do it so that I can do other things as well.
I love it. I love it. I think to your point, we have to acknowledge everybody's chapter when they come to Canada, and sometimes you're in survival mode and the first thing you need to do is get like a Canadian securities course if you need to get that first job, which is what happened to me. I never thought, okay, what do I love to do? And then once I had money, because I was making money at the bank, I could finally join a stand-up comedy course for the first time in my life. So thank you for sharing that. Kareen, how was your experience and how have you been able to discover those things that you're good at and enjoy and combine them to achieve even greater things?
Great question. I have had to lean into my ebb and flow. I've had to be fluid for a lot of it just because I wanted to come here and do sculpture, but I didn't have the space to do sculpture. I didn't have the experience to do sculpture, like just work experience. And so getting work is difficult when you have the paper, but not, just the experience to pair with it. And so I had to become resourceful by using other skills. I had to ask myself, well, what skills, what gifts, what talents do you have that fall within the art umbrella that you want to, I want to be a part of the creative sector. I want to be in the arts industry. So what else, do I currently have to offer? And then how can I use that as my stepping stone, just into the next thing to be able to manifest, just for example, right now, it's been 8 going on 9 years and I'm only just now getting a studio space to do sculpture work. So things like that, I had to get, I had to do different workshops. I had to, join different programs. I had to build, just working relationships or just sit with people who are in the job and just listen to them talk so that I could know, okay, well, maybe I need to go and.
You just muted yourself, Kareen. But just like the last second, we heard everything.
But yes, that's what I've had to do. I've had to lean into a mural painting journey, to be able to navigate the arts for a while, to get some experience, to meet other persons, while also, as Sebastián said, just still talking about all of these other things that I still want to do, to not, blow the flame out on it just because I'm not able to do it right now, and to be patient and hopeful that I'm making the right choices for myself currently. I'm meeting the right people, and it will, at some point come to fruition if I continue to move forward.
I love it. I loved when you said that you had to not wait, but it's been 9 years and you finally have the space to do sculpting. So I think we have as immigrants, newcomer artists, we have to be patient. If not, it's okay, because Canada will teach you how to be patient anyways. So either you do it or it'll come to you anyways. Betty, how I'm really interested in your journey as well, because I go back to Costa Rica and they're like, there's the Canadian guy. But here I'm like, the Costa Rican guy. And then I'm like, well, who am I if I'm nobody, How have you been able to escape competition through authenticity? Because now you're very good at these 3-4 things and you've been able to embrace it. Is it being kind to yourself? Is it being very intentional about these things? Is it being patient? What's been your experience?
I would say it's all of those things. And, I think picking out the threads of like, I feel like there's like, I like what you said earlier, Stephan, that like, don't compare your chapter 3 with other people's chapter 64. And I feel like everybody that's early in their career or newcomer in this country goes through that chapter 1 to 3, that is all about safety and survival. And I don't want to dismiss that, because like even talking to like finding your strength, sometimes like, wow, I wouldn't be able to do that back then when I would take any jobs that I would come my way, graduating with an arts degree. Like I was just like was making ends meet. But in that stage, like if you are new to this country or new to that industry, there is a stage of like trying everything. And then you start to be aware of like, oh, I like this, I don't like this, or like when other people are okay with that, I'm not okay with this. So that exploratory phase, I feel like everybody goes through. Then it hits a point where you're like, okay, now I feel more mentally safe or physically safe and rooted in this space. Where do I go from there? And I think is that for me, that pivot is that embracing that I'm not a specialist and starting to actually having fun with embracing not being a specialist and not refusing to pick a lane. And in starting to see, like, for example, for my fundraising clients, like most of my fundraising clients are arts-based because they know that I have an arts background. And that I didn't actually like strategically reach out to like arts clients, but it just kind of naturally become my strength. But I think when I say natural, I look back to that, like, you know, everybody has like a decade-long experience here, right? It's that patience of like letting those things converge. But I think the key is not working against yourself, your own strength. If you're a specialist, don't force it to like try to like do many things that overwhelm you. And if you're multifaceted, then just like start owning that.
Yes, I really agree on the embracing every stage. If you're a specialist in a couple of things, then double down on them and see where it takes you, because you never know where these things are going to take you in Canada. I think you have to embrace every stage, because, for example, when I was at the bank, I used to be like, oh, I wish I was a comedian. And I thought that all my problems would be solved as soon as I quit my job and became a comedian. But you guess what? It's very hard to be creative when you have to be creative and sell. I was balling after the bank, at 5 o'clock, every time I left the bank, I was on vacation. So I could write, I could perform. I knew I had the money to pay the bills, and it was relaxed. But I thought that, oh, it's going to be so much better when I quit. But now I had to perform. I had to do all these things. And it's inefficient to be stressed. It's hard to be creative when you have to. So if you're working at Tim Hortons, embrace it. If you're working at a bank, embrace it. If you made the jump, also embrace it. There's no like a one solution where like you have to quit or you have to do it as a hobby. Just embrace your journey and it'll work out. I want to go back again to Sebastián, then Kareen, and then Betty with this, I guess, last very quick question of the panel, to be respectful of her. Second and last question of the panel, to be respectful of time. But if we had to do this all over again, not the panel, but our careers, immigrating into Canada, coming to Canada, what would be that one piece of advice or resource that you would give yourself? If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? I guess the question is, if there was another person coming to Canada as an artist, somebody from Chile with your same interest, Sebastián, or Squamish that you were there before, Kareen, somebody from Jamaica with your similar interest, Betty, somebody with your similar interests, what would be that one piece of advice or a resource that you would like to give to another newcomer? First Sebastián, then Kareen, then Betty.
Wow, what a great question, and such a complicated one too. I think, you know, it's like there's multiple answers here because it would depend on the personality type. So if there was somebody introverted like me, I would say find people who support you and just always push yourself just a little bit more. For me,
Yeah.
for me, it was like, the reason I wasn't courageous is because I felt like death to, like I would die if I failed,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. If you fail, it actually doesn't feel like death. It feels like, oh crap, now I have to pick myself up and just try again, right? So that's, like, so if you're scared to be courageous, that's okay. You're not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a very, like courageous person and you want to go and you don't know where to begin, I would say just start going to shows, start going to things that, that you like. If it's dance, if it's sculpture, if it's, film, start attending that stuff. And oftentimes there's Q&As or socials, so attend that stuff so you can start to network. So those would be my two kinds of advice.
Thank you so much. Kareen?
Hi. I think for me to, I'm not a younger version of myself or another artist looking to come from Jamaica, I would say, be prepared to conquer the culture shock. Get a really warm jacket because it's very cold. And I found that has affected my productivity. You talked about, just having to work or be creative when, like it's work. The cold also really, like when you're from an island and you're used to hot temperature all the time, it will affect how you approach your work, how you feel in the space, so I would say get a nice jacket. Find the Black people. If you're of the melanin, just variety, find the Black people, find your community so that you can have them to ground you, so that you can have a sense of home, so that you can remember why it is that you left, why it is that you're here, and what it is that you're ultimately working toward. I think a lot of artists that come out of Jamaica are culturally driven. There's so much positivity, there's so much greatness that comes out of the country that you automatically also want to be a part of that excellence and that legacy. And so I feel like you need to find those places, that sense, to have that sense of community. I would also say try not to lose yourself in the rat race, because the pace of Jamaica is very different from the pace of Canada. And I had to learn that very early, because I felt like, oh my God, I'm moving so slow. Am I on island time? And it really is just Canadians are just really, really fast at what they're doing, or like they move really quickly through the subway. I had to like change my whole pace with walking, like they're go, 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 go. And I'm like, can we just wait like for 2 seconds so that I can catch my breath? And so I had to remember, just kind of my inner breathing to be able to deal with the outward environment. I will advise you that it's very competitive. So be prepared for that, that though the opportunities are here, you still have to work, and you still have to, as Sebastián said, like you have to demonstrate and put yourself out there so that people can know who you are, so that you can be able to be afforded the opportunities. Because I haven't spoken to anyone from working culture before, to be honest, this panel talk, but here I am now, because either my name was mentioned or because you saw something, and now we're able to have this discussion with, all of these great people and all of the participants who are here to just kind of soak something up to be able to make their journey that much easier. Definitely do the workshops. I'm kidding you not. You need to do taxes for artists, finance, like business finance, business management, entrepreneurial skills, because when you're an artist, you become the business. And so you have to treat yourself as such while still not, like forgetting who you are as an individual, because the two, like these different things like cross over into each other. So you have to, I know it's a lot, but you have to like keep it all together. Just remember that you are the umbrella and that everything else is underneath, and that you won't lose your way, because, like I said, just take the initiative. I would say volunteer where you can, get into where you can, remember the jackets, again, find the Black people, and just don't give up. No, you laugh, it's serious. Just don't give up on the work. Really believe in who you are, believe in what you have to offer, believe in your culture, if that is where, like the drive and the passion is from, and just don't stop moving. I that's what I tell myself. Just don't give up, because you just never know. The next day could be that much greater. Just also enjoy the process of becoming a new person, because when you're an immigrant, you have an added just, what's that word, like bubble to your identity. Like there's just this new facet of yourself that you have to navigate through as well. So yes, you're settling into a new country, and I know you want to like do really well, just as you said, instantaneously, because that's what the world is so used to. But remember to, to give yourself grace, to have some patience, and to move through it just, as best as you can,
Love it.
with all of the support that you can carry with you. Because if it wasn't for my family, both chosen and blood, man, I'd be in a ditch. So that's what I would
Well,
say.
Thank you for sharing, Kareen. Find the Black People is getting lots of likes in the chat for sure. Betty, what about you? Before
I love,
we
like, yeah, I
move
love the
into the
diversity of
Q&A.
this panel, because like Kareen, you said that, like, be mindful that like come to Canada and it's really fast. If like my friends from East Asia, especially if they're coming, I would say the opposite. Be mindful that things turn around really slowly here. Because
Oh,
I used to
yeah.
work in a film festival for age, like, Real Asian Film Festival. I go to Hong Kong every year. The escalator there, like, actually, it's like almost 2 times faster than the escalator here. So people are very like into like getting turned around really quickly. And I see people immigrating here and get disheartened that the process of finding a job or finding an opportunity, landing a grant, like getting a grant from the Arts Council, you wait for half a year. That's really different pace. So I think just be prepared, expect that, like that's like,
Yeah.
no matter where you come from, there is a different pace. But the other thing that I want to say is also, I find that in Canada, there is this peculiarity to focus on Canadian experience. And I think that's why the panelists here have like recommend everybody to like make connections and volunteer. And I found that to be a little bit problematic, to be honest, how much we care about like someone's resume shows Canadian experience. And I see people constantly getting disvalued, even though they have incredible international experience. So that's another thing that I just want to name it, that like, if you're coming as a new person, just beware that that's one of the system barrier that you're working against. And the third thing, if I were to start over again, and I'm going to give a very fundraiser answer, is be aware of like, as an artist, of like, where are the money coming from? So there's grants, but maybe you want to consider being entrepreneurial. Like, I love that Kareen, you did like a t-shirt, and because no one can live off an artist grant. That's just the reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Betty. And I just want to add before we move into the Q&A. Mary A says real talk in the chat. I love it. So if you're arriving, I'm going to spoil the movie for you, but at the end of the movie, you will realize that you were good enough this whole time. So don't be scared. Go and do it. Most of the time we minimize the experience that we have from Costa Rica, Jamaica, Chile, China, wherever, but you're amazing. Go try it. You're not going to find out if you don't do it. So go and try, and you will find out that yes, it'll take time, because talent and skills are not enough. You got to be able to ride the wave of networking, of grant writing, of getting the space, of how people speak here, react here, attend events here, cultural stuff. But you were good enough this whole time. So the quicker you jump into it, the quicker you'll be able to achieve things that you're very proud about. My friends, this has been fantastic. I am deeply grateful for Betty, Sebastián, Kareen, and obviously to Naomi, Stephanie, and the whole Working Culture team. I'm going to hand it back to Naomi to see if we can get 1 or 2 questions. I don't know. We went over time, but there you go. Back to you, Naomi. Thank you so much.
That was so amazing. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome, rock stars completely. Thank you so much for being here today. So I am going to shut the recording now, just so that we can get a couple of questions in. Hopefully we can. We have 10 minutes, so let's see what we can do with that.